Today we're going to be seeing Ramsay's top 50 cooking tips to do in the kitchen. If you are new to the channel, my name is James. I've been cooking for many years in many different places, and even under Jason Atherton, who used to be one of Ramsay's top chefs. Now, let's get started.
First up, how to keep your knife sharp.
It's far harder working in the kitchen with a blunt knife than it is with a sharp knife. The secret behind keeping a sharp knife, sharpen it before and every time you use it.
This is true, and in actual fact, it's easier to cut yourself with a dull knife than a sharp knife. It's counterintuitive, but when you're using a dull knife, you have to apply more pressure. And if that blade slips, it can cut you.
First, grip the steel. Feel really comfortable about holding the steel. Imagine you're holding a tennis racket or you're playing squash. You've got to be really comfortable with it. Now, 45 degrees, confident grip with the knife. This is the butt of the steel. Really important you keep your fingers behind that. You never grip a steel with your fingers over that, because the knife comes back in, you've just lost a finger. Always grip behind. Nice long strokes so we get the whole of the blade.
I have done a few videos on knife basics. If you want to see those videos after this one, I recommend it. What Ramsay's doing right now is he's using this steel. It's called a honing rod as well. It's just to correct the blade. This is not to sharpen the knife. Now there are diamond steels which do actually remove a lot of metal and they do sharpen the knife, but if you are going to be using or sharpening a knife, I highly recommend using a stone. You will get a much better result.
Slow strokes over the top of the steel and then come back underneath. Then back underneath. It is so dangerous working in the kitchen with a blunt knife. You can cause so much damage. Working with a sharp knife is 10 times quicker, more efficient. Now, that's ready to start chopping.
If you're not comfortable with this, you can take the honing rod, turn it upside down and put it on the counter and do it the opposite way. This is a lot safer so you don't cut yourself, but again, I explained this in other videos, so be sure to check them out.
Stop your chopping board rocking or slipping. A great tip is to simply wet a kitchen cloth, kitchen paper or tea towel and place it underneath. Now you can chop with confidence.
You can use one towel, this is fine, but if your board is a little warped, you can also take a few paper towels, take 4 of them, wet them, roll them into little balls and put them on each corner. And this way you can independently adjust the level of each corner.
My next top tip is, get the most out of your humble veg peeler. It's brilliant for slicing ultra-thin ribbons of veg, perfect for Asian dishes. Great for making long, delicate parmesan shavings to top soups and salads. It also makes wonderful chocolate curls.
Ramsay's talking about the potato peeler. Even though that the camera was zoomed in so close you couldn't actually see the piece of equipment, you can also use a mandolin as well to cut veg.
Your pepper mill is more versatile than you might think. Tighten the top screw to get finely ground pepper, ideal for soups and sauces. For general seasoning, you want it medium ground, so set the screw in the middle. And loosen it right off for coarse pepper, perfect for steaks and fish.
That's it. Now to give you guys a little more than just that, to refill those little pepper mills, because it's a pain in the you-know-what, you can take a little piece of paper, put it into a little funnel and fill it. Or if you have a funnel that fits, then you can just pour the little peppercorns in there, because otherwise it's very difficult to refill it and it's a little annoying.
Peeling garlic. For 1 clove, simply bash it with the back of a knife and the skin comes off easily. For a whole head, crush, separate into a bowl, cover and shake hard for about 10 seconds. Then simply pick out the peeled cloves.
I would also recommend to cut the base of the clove before you cut it. If you're doing them individually, this way it comes off easier. Also, if the garlic is starting to sprout, it is a good idea to cut them lengthways and to take out the germ.
How to chop an onion.
This is the root. That's absolutely crucial. Leave that on there. If you cut that off, the onion will start to bleed and you'll start crying rapidly. Slice going forward. Let the weight of the knife do the work. 3 fingers, 1 in front, 2 behind. And this part of the knuckle is going to guide the knife.
This is a very classic way on teaching you on how to cut an onion. One little free tip I'll give you guys. If you refrigerate your onions, they won't cry as much. It won't be as pungent. Also, if you do it in an area where it's well ventilated, like you have your canopy on or the door or the window open, it'll help. Point the knife towards the root and try to get as close to the root as possible with the weight of the blade to cut through that onion to get to the base of the root. And that's what we're left there. No waste, just the root. And look, there
you've got a really nice, finely chopped onion.
And if you see any big bits after doing exactly that, I would suggest to run your knife through the onions again, just chop them to make them finer. It doesn't hurt, it'll take an extra minute or so. Just keep running your knife through it and you'll have a much better consistency. Otherwise you'll have big pieces like this.
So much great cooking depends on starting with a high enough heat. If a recipe calls for a hot pan, put it on early so it gets smoking hot. And always remember to preheat your oven at least 20 minutes before cooking.
This is a good little tip, especially when you want to cook a pizza, let's say. If it says the cooking time is about 10 minutes, that's from when the oven is already hot. When you add colder food to a hot pan or to an oven, it will drop the temperature.
A clean cook is an efficient cook. My tip for a tidy cooking area is to always have a waste bowl next to you. It saves you going back and forth to the bin.
This is another great little tip. And if the cameraman could zoom out just a little bit so we can see Ramsay's setup, it would be even better. After I cut, I use my free hand to take the ingredients and to drop them in the bin, and then I keep cutting.
Never add salt to eggs before cooking them because it ruins the texture and dulls the colour. Instead, save your seasoning to the very end.
Now this is very subjective with chefs. Me, I tend to season my eggs in the beginning. However, if I'm going to be cooking eggs for Ramsay, I do them at the end because I know how he likes his eggs. But it's up to you how you want. At home, it doesn't really matter compared to when you're cooking professionally.
The key to cooking meat is to make sure it's at room temperature before you begin. Cooked straight from the fridge, the muscle fibres will be tight, which results in tough meat, and always let it rest afterwards, so it relaxes, becoming tender and juicy.
Now this again is a technique that is taught to a lot of chefs. If your steak is thin, it doesn't really matter as much as a thicker piece of steak. So if you have a very thick cut, it matters, and it matters a lot. If you're going to be roasting, it matters because it would take that much longer for the center of the roast to come up to temp.
How to de-seed chili.
To get the seeds out, hold it upright and just rub the chili between your hands. The seeds are incredibly hot. You're just releasing them from the inside, tapping it down, and then again, just a final little rub. Now, cut the top off, and then just open up, and look, they come out like little miniature Smarties.
This tip does work with certain types of chilies. If you have a chili that's very bent, it's not going to work so well. And you need to be careful when just handling some chilies because the moment that you touch them, your fingers can burn. And if you go to the bathroom or start touching your eyes, you're gonna have a problem.
Next, a great tip for using spare chilies. Using string, tie together the stalks, then simply hang in your kitchen. In just a few weeks, you'll get your very own dried chilies.
This is very common in like New Mexico and the Southwest. You can buy them too. You don't need to actually do it yourself, which, you know, saves you a little bit of time and money. But this is a very common thing to see in the Southwest, and I used to do this too as a kid.
Chilies are surprisingly versatile. If you love them in savoury dishes, my tip is to try adding them to melted chocolate ganache for chocolate chili truffles, or sprinkled over fresh fruit like mango or watermelon.
This I actually haven't tried. This is a good little tip.
A great tip to prevent burning sensitive skin when working with chilies.
To get rid of that spice and that heat on your fingers, a little bit of lemon, squeeze a little bit of lemon juice, and that instantly gets rid of the heat.
It doesn't necessarily work 100%. So if you happen to touch a few ghost chilies, a few habaneros and everything else, and you put lemon on it, and if it doesn't work, don't worry. If you take a little bit of butter in your hand, this helps because the butter is fat and it's also cold, so it can help to cool it down. Another thing is do not whatsoever touch your eyes. Wash your hands as thoroughly as you can with soap and water, but the feeling is going to be residual. It's going to last for hours. And whatever you do, do not go to the bathroom without gloves.
Spice up your drinks. For a Mexican twist, add a dash of hot chili sauce to beer or using cocktails to give your drink a very different sort of kick.
That's it. Ramsay didn't explain how to take the heat out of some of the chilies. If you want to remove a lot of the heat, instead of just removing the seeds, you need to remove the white membrane inside the chili peppers. This is where the capsaicin is. This is the chemical that makes the chilies hot. Now, some chilies are inherently just spicy as you know what, so you cannot remove all the heat. But if you do want to remove a little bit, this will help.
How to zest a lemon.
The important part is not to zest any of the pith.
The pith is the white part, so anytime that you're zesting limes, lemons, or oranges, You do not want that part. The reason why is very bitter.
Nice long strokes, but twisting the lemon round. Every time we go down, we twist. Same with the orange and same with the lime. Little tap. If you go too far, let me just show you. Look, you got that white, bitter pith that destroys the wonderful, zesty flavour. And look, that's what we're looking for there. This really nice, vibrant lemon zest.
Now, when you're juicing any fruit or anything, limes, lemons, oranges even, it is a good idea to roll them on the cutting board or the countertop first to soften them. This way it helps to break up the center, so when you go to squeeze it or juice them, it's a lot easier.
Garlic is a key ingredient in so many spicy dishes. My tip for finely chopping and mincing is to add a pinch of salt for abrasion, which helps break the fibers of the garlic down for a much better result.
This is a very classic method on mincing garlic with your knife. There's another method though that's a lot quicker. Take a microplane, take your little clove of garlic and shave it. And you'll end up with minced garlic in seconds.
For getting the most out of root ginger, simply remove the skin using a teaspoon. It's easier than using a knife, and you can get around the tricky bits. Or just keep the skin on and give it a good wash.
This is actually a good little tip with ginger. If the ginger starts to undergo photosynthesis, where it starts to actually sprout, it will start to turn the inside a little greenish. Cut it out.
Never throw out vanilla pods. There's a ton of flavour left in the skin. Stick inside jars of sugar and leave to infuse. Great to sprinkle on cakes, biscuits, or porridge.
This is a good little tip, not something that everyone may have in their house because vanilla pods are extremely expensive. If you have them, save them.
When grinding up spices, if you have any left over, you can store it in an airtight jar for up to 2 months. Great for a spicy kick to have at your fingertips.
And if you have a cryovac machine, the machine that will suck all the air out, they will actually stay a little longer because they won't have any contact with oxygen. You can also freeze them if you really need to keep them for a very, very long time. Like Ramsay used to say, cryovac, freeze, done.
How to cook the perfect rice.
Basmati rice, the king of all rices. Light, fluffy, delicious, and I'm going to show you how to cook it perfectly.
I think Uncle Roger should see this one. Where's Uncle Roger when you need him?
Start off with 400 grams of rice. Rice in, spot on. So what I'm going to do now is just rinse off the dust and the starch. Cold water, always. And just rinse the rice.
If Uncle Roger was reviewing this right now, he would have said rice cooker about 50 times because it takes all the effort out of having to make it.
Rice into the pan. Now, to make a plain, fluffy rice exciting, we're going to infuse it. 3 cardamom pods, and then star anise. Now, these are beautiful. Whole star anise. It makes it really nice and fragrant. Salt and pepper. A lot easier to season the rice now than it is once it's cooked. You start to break it up when you season it once it's cooked. Now, basically, 1 part rice to 1.5 part water.
The common way on seasoning like basmati rice when cooking it in the kitchen is to use ginger and to use lemongrass. This is very common, of course, with salt and everything. You season the water, but these 2 ingredients are very, very common. These I haven't tried before with basmati rice.
Bring it up to the boil as quick as possible and turn it down and let it simmer for 8 to 10 minutes. And that's the secret behind cooking great rice. Allow it to steam as it's cooking. Do not lift that lid up. Lid off. It smells aromatic. Basically, all the water's absorbed, the rice has doubled in size, and it's nice and light and fluffy. Take the star anise out, the cardamom pods, they all should have risen to the top.
This method is a little different than the method that I was taught with my Indian chefs at work, so one day I'll have to show you guys on how to do that. But basically, their method was to bring the water up to a boil first, then add the rice to it. And when it would come out, it would be literally like feather light. And you could keep it in the fridge for at least a week before it went bad.
Once you've forked it through, it becomes really nice and light and fluffy. And there. That is perfectly cooked rice.
Once you're finished cooking, whatever method you're going to be using, take the rice out, put it on a flat tray or a big plate and lay it flat. Stick that in the fridge because the fridge is a dry environment. It will dry the rice out more, and that way your rice will stay fresh for at least 5 days.
Always make the most of your leftovers. Use last night's rice in stir fries, scrambled up with eggs, or it's simple to make a delicious fresh salad. Remember, a good cook wastes nothing.
No, this is true. The sad thing is, though, is that most restaurants waste a lot of food. Very good little tip, and it's actually a tip that Uncle Roger, myself, and many other creators and chefs have been talking about for years. You can do a lot of things with leftover rice.
A great tip for stopping potatoes, apples and avocados from going brown when cut. Simply cover with water and add a squeeze of lemon. The acidity stops the flesh from oxidizing, which is what causes the color to change.
Again, this is a very common little kitchen hack. It is important, especially with like guacamole, when you're making it, you can add a little bit of lime, extra lime on top, and you can also take a little bit of clear film and put that directly on the surface.
Herbs are great for adding flavor without spending a fortune. To keep them at their best, simply place them in a glass of water and they'll stay fresh for up to a week.
This is one tip that works. It depends on where you live. When I do this in my house, my basil dies immediately. Another tip is what I've explained in other videos, is to take a little paper towel, wrap them, damp them, and then put them back in the fridge. A damp paper towel will help keep them moist. They will not dry out as quickly.
And if you've got extra herbs left over, save on waste by making an amazing flavored oil. Place wash and dried stems in a bottle, cover with warmed olive oil, then seal and leave to infuse.
Actually, a little bit of tarragon and olive oil would be very nice. And this is a good little tip. You can use rosemary, you can use thyme. Thyme is very tasty. The problem is that most of the time I use so many fresh herbs in my house that I kill them, even the little plants, so they don't have time to go bad.
Cooking pasta, a great budget basic to keep in the cupboard.
It can be easily undercooked or overcooked. Here's how to do it properly. First, water in. Nice large pan to make sure the pasta's got sufficient room to cook evenly. Nicely seasoned, absolutely crucial. Olive oil in. That stops the pasta from sticking together.
Right, now if you ask an Italian this,
Not right!
you don't need to add oil to the water. Water and oil don't mix. Some of the oil will coat the pasta after you pour it out. I mean, it will, but you can also just stir the pasta in the pot as it's cooking. And when it comes out, if you're not gonna add it directly to the sauce, then you can add a little bit of oil to prevent the pasta from sticking to each other.
That's a rolling boil. The secret there, it stops the pasta from sticking together and it gently rolls it around. Now, this is angel pasta, nice thin pasta, takes 3.5 to 4 minutes. So, into the pan, as it hits the water, it melts, and then you turn it around. Tongs, as that starts to melt, gently twist that into the pan, bring it back up to the boil. If you're bad at timing, then set a timer.
It is very important when you're cooking pasta to check. Physically take a little piece of pasta out and bite it.
Lift a little strand, and you can actually feel it with your fingers. It's still nice and firm. Al dente. Not a bite, not a strong bite, but just really nice and firm inside. Into a colander, drain the pasta. In a light seasoning, salt and pepper, a tablespoon of olive oil. Mix that through. That stops it from sticking together. And look, there you go. Beautiful pasta, al dente.
If you're going to be cooking pasta for any salads, it is very important to overcook the pasta, because when you're eating the salad, more often than not, you're going to eat it colder. Pasta, when it starts to chill, will start to harden a little bit. So it's not nice to have an al dente piece of like pasta salad.
A tip for making the most of spare bread: blitz leftovers into breadcrumbs, great for stuffing or crab cakes, or cut into chunks and freeze for perfect croutons on demand, or simply tear and use in a delicious rustic salad.
Bread, again, is very versatile. I mean, in the old days, they used to make bread out of everything. You used to even make like bread soup.
Dried pulses like chickpeas or lentils are great for soups and stews and cost pennies. But don't season them until the end of the cooking, or the salt makes them go tough.
This is a good little tip, but if you don't have a lot of time to be making any like beans or anything like this at home, and you don't want to be cooking them overnight or soaking them overnight, then just buy the pre-made ones. Rinse them, and they will cook in literally less than half the time.
For perfect boiled potatoes, always start them off in cold water and never boiling water. This way, by the time the centers of the potatoes are cooked, the outside won't be falling apart.
However, there is a little leeway to this tip. If you're in a rush and you want to make some mashed potatoes, you can add lukewarm water and they will cook a little faster, because if you're going to be making mash out of it, it doesn't really matter. It's just when you want like whole potatoes.
With how to skin and debone a fish the hassle-free way.
This is basically a filleted side of salmon. It's been taken off the bone and now skin off. Pick up your knife, a really nice, broad, flexible filleting knife.
Right, now you need to be careful when playing with your knives like that, because Ramsay has broken them before.
The filleting knife that does the work for you. That's a flexible blade that bends round the bone on the fish and doesn't allow it. Oh, me. Okay, shit, I've just stabbed Danny.
Lift up the base of the towel and then just nick a little bit at the end there. Twist the knife almost as if it's horizontally underneath the salmon. Pull the skin and you slice the salmon underneath and let the knife do the work. Now, get your skin, flip it back over and check you're not leaving too much salmon on top of the skin.
Now, it's not necessary to cut the skin off. Some people actually do enjoy it. You don't need to get rid of it. It will also protect the fish when cooking it in the pan if you leave the skin on. It is also a better idea to get a knife that's longer than the width of the fish.
Pull it back, and nice and slowly. Get the skin, wrap it around your fingers, pull the salmon towards you, and then just all the way through. Lay that down. One nicely skinned salmon, just like a perfect snake skin.
Before you cut the salmon up into smaller pieces, it is a good idea to remove any of like the gray meat on the back end. It's not necessarily toxic or anything, it's just like all the crud, it's all the blood and everything. You don't want it. It's also a good idea to remove any bones that are in the fish before you slice these up into little fillets.
Get your knife and just run the knife down, and then with a pair of tweezers, these are fish tweezers, but you can use normal tweezers, look for the head, up, and pull. And with the skin being removed from underneath the salmon, the pin bones come out a lot easier. To just basically halfway along the fillet, one nice fillet of salmon, beautiful.
Most of the salmon that you buy is actually farm-raised salmon. It's artificially colored. So if the meat wasn't colored, it would actually be gray. Not very pleasant. So what do? They color dye the meat. Now, there's nothing inherently or supposedly wrong with farmed fish. It's just that the fish don't have as much exercise, basically, as wild-caught fish. They're cheaper as well. So you will get a fish that's fattier if you buy farm-raised fish. If you have wild-caught fish, the meat will actually have a nice darker color to it, and they'll be leaner.
There's still plenty of flavour in the trimmings from a filleted fish. My tip is don't waste those fish bones. Add to water, wine, a bay leaf, and some chopped veg to make a simple but versatile fish stock at home, the perfect base for a delicious fish soup.
Salmon has a very distinctive flavor, so you can't necessarily use that fish stock for everything. If you get any monkfish or you get any other type of like white fish, that is perfect to use for a fish stock. You can even make some chowder as well, and I have a very good recipe for halibut chowder.
A great tip for intensely flavoured, stress-free veg is to steam them in their own juices. Simply add to a pan with a knob of butter and seasoning, then cook on a low heat with the lid on to lock in the moisture.
Another great little tip, and the cameraman again is showing us the molecules in that pan.
For crispy roast potatoes you can depend on, my tip is to parboil them, leave them to steam dry, then sprinkle them with semolina or flour and give them a good roughing up. This ensures they go really crispy in the oven.
This is a good little tip using semolina. The thing is though, if you add a little bit of duck fat to this as well, instead of just using olive oil or another fat, it makes the potatoes super delicious.
A great tip for browning meat or fish is to dry it with kitchen roll before you cook it. Then you'll get a much better colour. Too much moisture makes the meat steam instead of sear.
This is a very important tip and a very good one. This one is very, very useful.
My tip for amazing tuna carpaccio is to freeze it first, and it will slice beautifully.
This is another good little tip, but this goes for anything when you need to cut like raw meat where it doesn't have a lot of stability when you want to cut it thin, especially like making beef tartare.
It's wise to save leftover wine for cooking. my tip is to freeze the remaining wine in freezer bags or ice cube trays. It's great in stocks and sauces.
You know, I never seem to have leftover wine at home, so I can't freeze it because there's nothing ever left over.
When you freeze soups or stews in tubs, the tip is not to overfill them. Leave room to expand in the container.
In the freezer, water expands. So if you fill something up to the top, you'll probably burst the container.
A great tip for a cheap homemade ice cream: buy a high quality vanilla ice cream and make it your own by mixing in berries, chocolate, or my favorite, rum and boozy raisins.
I didn't expect that one. That is actually a good little tip. But again, this isn't something that I tend to keep in the house very often. Normally when I get ice cream, I eat it right away.
A fantastic tip for leftover lemons and limes is to cut them into wedges, freeze and use them like ice cubes. They won't water down your drink and they'll also add flavour.
Actually, this one I like. If you have a lot of people coming over as well to like have a little party or anything, this is a very good idea.
Open up the legs and just pierce the skin there. Careful not to cut into the breast. And hand on top of the breast and pull the drum back, pop out, and then slice the knife straight across. There's the thigh, there's the drum. Get your thumb and feel the joint, and with the weight of the knife, just slices through.
The method that Ramsay is showing you is the method that I learned on how to butcher a chicken. This is a very, very easy way I'm doing it and very common. There are other ways on butchering a chicken, and even in culinary school, they may not teach you this method.
Bit of a chef's tip, halfway down the drum, just slice through onto the bone, and then from there, scrape the tendons, and then hand down, nice and firm on top.
I recommend using a German knife like Ramsay is using. He's using Wurststoff. You do not want to use your Japanese knife like this. Don't risk wasting a bunch of money.
Now, pull out the wing, feel where the end of the joint is, and just slice in there. Through. A beautiful, big, whole, delicious wing.
Once you start to collect enough of them, you can make some chicken wings, which, by the way, I have a video on some delicious chicken wings.
This is the Rolls Royce part. 2 breasts, that's the breastbone there. Place the chicken on the board and then just slice down on the back of the crown. Everyone always cuts around, just tilt it upwards, straight through. That way we get straight to the center of the carcass and therefore there's no waste. Nice. 2 drums, 2 thighs, 2 wings, 2 breasts of chicken, and one amazing carcass for a stock.
When you're finished with the stock, before you toss everything in the bin, take the carcass out, let it cool down, and start to pick off the rest of the meat. There will be some meat left on the bone, there always is. Take that meat and save it. Use that meat for whatever you want. If you're gonna be making some buttered chicken, use it for buttered chicken. Shred it up. Use it for any shredded chicken for a sandwich or anything, a salad.
A great tip to stop your skewers burning when you're making kebabs is to soak them in water first. Or for skewers with added flavour, strip your rosemary branches of their leaves and use instead.
Using the rosemary is actually a very easy thing as well. Also, you could omit having this issue if you just use metal skewers.
For no fuss marinating, my tip is to place fish or meat in a plastic storage bag while they marinate. It's easy to store and there's less cleanup.
This is pretty typical in the kitchen when we use sous vide. We normally put the meat and different veg in little bags and then sous vide them. So we take all the air out, and that way they stay fresh as well in the fridge for a few days.
Lime juice or lemon juice make great marinades. My tip for getting maximum amount of juice from a lemon or lime is to roll it hard under your palm for a minute before juicing.
Ramsay did explain the little tip that I explained earlier. Okay, good. Another little tip though, when juicing any lemons especially, they can be very seedy, you want to take a little sieve and that will collect all the seeds. That way you don't have to be picking them out.
Lemons are also useful for rice. Add a couple of drops of juice while you cook it to keep your grains looking nice, white and bright.
You know, that is something that I have never heard of before. You learn something new every day, don't you?
I want to cook my steak rare, so by touching the steak, I want the same feedback as it is on the inside of my thumb. That's rare. As it starts to cook, it gets a lot firmer. Medium is there, semi-firm with a slight resistance. Well done is there. Rare.
Now this is a technique that can work, but is highly subjective on who is cooking. After 50 years of cooking, my father, who had 1 year of retirement before he passed away, he could not open his hands fully. They were like this. That's how bad his hands were, just from gripping everything all the time. So if you're going to be doing this at home and you don't use your hands a lot to work with, you may not have the same results. The best method on to make sure if your steak is done or not is to use a thermometer.
A great tip for getting meat or fish to cook faster is to score it, which allows the heat to penetrate quicker. This also allows marinades to be absorbed more deeply.
This is true. This is a very good little tip. It works.
For stain-free Tupperware, coat it thinly with oil, which acts as a barrier between plastic and food.
This tip I don't think is quite necessary if you don't use plastic containers to begin with and you use either glass or metal. It's up to you. There's this whole thing now with microplastics, so if you don't want microplastics, don't use them.
It's so easy to make your own chili sherry to use in quick stir-fries or sauces. Take 450 ml of dry sherry, such as Fino, and using a funnel, pour into a sterilised bottle. Add 5 whole Thai chilies, seal with a cork or lid, and leave to infuse for a couple of weeks.
This is an interesting one. You can tell that Gordon likes chilies, no?
My tip for using any discarded chili seeds is plant them to grow yourself some new chili peppers. Plant in an eggshell or seedling trays. Start them indoors and move outside when they're ready.
If you have the space, you can grow them inside. You need to get like a little growth lamp if you're going to be doing it indoors so they continue to grow. And if you want them to pollinate, I used to do this when I was a kid, get some Q-tips and go from flower to pollinate. You need to change the Q-tips though with the plants unless you want to cross-pollinate. Now this is part 1 of his little 100 tips thing, so we can do part 2 if you guys enjoy this. The thing is though, is that there are thousands of things to know in the kitchen. Tips, tricks, and just methods on working more efficiently. And to be quite honest, not everyone knows everything there is to know in the kitchen. It's impossible to know everything. So even if you are an experienced chef, hopefully you did learn a few things that you didn't know before. And maybe we'll do a video like this. It'd probably take a hell of a long time for me to put this together, but I think it'd be good. Until next time, take care guys, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out this next video here.